Hello and welcome back to Continental Club, where we discuss the hottest topics in European football. It's the first one after a 4-week hiatus. You join me in my coronavirus lockdown in Brixton, my girlfriend's house. We've also got Joe and Pato. Welcome aboard, boys. How are you doing?
Good, mate. How are you?
Yeah, fine. Let's get straight into it, though, because we've got a bumper Barcelona episode for you guys today. This is because at Footballing V1 has asked what should Barcelona's midfield look like next year, whenever that is, after the problems they've had with it this year. But before we get into that, just a quick reminder to subscribe to Eurofootball Daily and hit that notification bell to never miss a video. But obviously Barcelona have been the talk of the town this week. Neymar is linked with a return to the club. Griezmann could be on his way out. They've got issues abounding in a season of turmoil for them. Pat, do you think their issues this year stem from not using their funds, but perhaps that wisely last summer?
To some extent, yeah. Like, I think there are managerial issues too, which I think we'll get into in a bit. But fundamentally, they knew they were super reliant on Messi last summer. And they went out and got a superstar attacker to try and address that. But they got one who didn't fit their team at all, who was too old, who was overpriced. And I don't really understand what their theory was. Like, when has Griezmann ever played off the left and been great? When has that ever happened in his career? I don't think it ever has. And so it just seems like they made a rod for their own back. Frenkie de Jong was a great signing in midfield, but he's having to stitch together a midfield which now consists of an old Busquets who doesn't get around as easily as he used to and can't defend the way he used to. And Arthur, who's a very good passer and a very good dribbler, but not really much of a creator and not a defender at all. I mean, I think his defensive output this season has been lower than Ozil's. Like, if you're gonna get that from somebody, you kind of want them to be a lights out attacker. It just seems like they've created more and more problems because now they've got wages stacked up forever. Like, not just in guys like Griezmann, but also, you know, Arturo Vidal, Ivan Rakitic. These are people who had rumours of interest last summer. Barca could have tried to offload them and didn't. And frankly, as well, you hear a lot of Barca fans feeling sorry for themselves because of the injuries they've had. But I think all the injuries they've had were totally foreseeable. Umtiti and Ousmane Dembele have been permanently injured since they've been there. And Luis Suarez is 32 now, I think. Like, you've got to expect that at his age, he's not going to be fit for that much of the season. So it just seems like they had loads and loads of predictable issues mounting up. And rather than going and addressing them, they just said, you know what, let's get the player who we missed out on before because we want to prove to the world. I feel like they were just a little bit annoyed about that whole, like, La Decisión, like, video. And so they were kind of like, no, we're going to go and get that guy now just to prove that he didn't friend zone us. Like, if we want him, we can get him.
Yeah, for sure. I think you're probably right. It wasn't the signing they needed that summer, and it hasn't really worked out for them. I know Real Madrid fans or Barcelona fans will come to their defence saying they're 2 points ahead of Real Madrid. What's the fuss? But we're judging them on their massively high standards over the last 10 years, and they've already lost 5 games, which is their joint most in any 5 league games. That is joint most in any league season in the last 9 years. They got knocked out in the Copa del Rey quarter-finals. Yes, they've gone unbeaten through the Champions League, but they didn't look convincing at all in their first leg away at Napoli, although they did get that crucial away goal. So there are plenty of problems. And Joe, Sky Sports have reported this week that Neymar wants to go back to Barcelona, and Barcelona are considering, swapping Griezmann for him. Do you think that would be a clever thing for the club to do?
I think that would be a poor decision. I think that the signing of Neymar would be a mistake, to be totally honest. And it would be a mistake in the same vein signing Antoine Griezmann was. I think there are better options in the market. But also, Neymar brings so much baggage with him, it's actually a problem. He's currently, I believe anyway, according to reports, suing Barcelona for a previous transfer. He's very injury prone. And they've already got enough wingers with injury issues, haven't they? Looking the likes of Ousmane Dembele. He'd cost an arm and a leg to get out of PSG. He'd be on massive wages. And I just don't understand the joined-up thought process behind signing Antoine Griezmann at 100 million euros plus. 12 months later going, he didn't really work out. We're going to go and sign another 28, 29-year-old superstar that's ready-made and force him to play out on the left as well. and then in 2-3 years' time we'll have to readdress the whole thing and sign another £140 million player. They failed with the signing of Ousmane Dembele, maybe not their fault because he's been injuries, that's £100 million plus. Coutinho was a total failure, that's £100 million plus. Griezmann's going to be considered, is he? A 12-month total failure, that's £100 million plus. And Neymar, if he doesn't win him a Champions League, is that then another failure? Because they might well win the league this year, even without Neymar. So if Neymar does come in, he has to win you a Champions League, and he doesn't guarantee that. He's so injury prone, he can't even get into the latter stages of the Champions League at PSG. I think this was the first season in 2 or 3 campaigns that he's played a knockout game because of his ankle injuries and the fact he has to go back to the carnival every February. So I'm not overly convinced about the signing of Neymar. Go and spend that money on Jadon Sancho. Go and spend that money on Lautaro Martinez. Go and spend that money more effectively on a midfielder or a defender. It just doesn't make sense to bring Neymar back to the club as much as Messi wants to reunite with his mate. Sort it out at a structural level. The president is getting hammered by everyone. The board's getting hammered. The players hate the president. The manager's not in favour. It's a mess. It's a catastrophe behind the scenes, and Neymar adds more baggage to it.
Yeah, he definitely wouldn't go there quietly. I'm just thinking, I hear what you say about Lautaro Martinez. I hear what you say about Sancho. I agree, much more sensible transfers. But for immediate success in the next 2 years, I think I think Neymar's return is more likely to bring that than Griezmann. Although I do agree that Lautaro Martinez seems like the guy to go for. I think it's 11 goals in about 20 Serie A games this year. Shone in the Champions League as well. 5 goals in 6 in that. Close to 5 shots a game. Only 0.1 behind Messi on expected goals per 90. So that seems like a very potential sensible transfer. And Pat, I know that you've thought highly of Marcelo Brozovic as well. Do you think he could be an addition in that midfield? And where do you think the midfield could look to strengthen?
I think I would probably look for a guy in the deep role, like Brozovic, just because Frankie de Jong can play there, but it seems like it's going to limit him. Frankie de Jong can go and win the ball, and he is actually really good at that. But I also want him to have the freedom to run forward and get the ball into the final third. And if he's not allowed to do that, then I feel like you've got a player who you've spent top money on, but who's kind of performing like he's limited. So I would probably want somebody to either play a similar role to de Jong, where when one of them goes forward, the other sits, or who just is an out-and-out defensive presence. And Brozovic is one of the few players in the world who has that defensive ability, while also having the passing, the press resistance that Barcelona are going to expect. I mean, a few years ago, we'd have just said Verratti, right? Like, Verratti would have been obvious. Or when they wanted to get Thiago back from Bayern, like, these would have been obvious guys for them. And they could easily go and find somebody, from the Brazilian league or something, like somebody who is kind of underrated and could perform this role. But it's really hard to see where that person comes from. And this is the problem of spending huge money on these other players, because you get locked into, it's not just the money you spend up front, but you get locked into long-term expensive contracts. And it means that Barcelona actually don't really have infinite money. Like they need to nail the expensive signings, because otherwise they're stuck making cheaper ones to try and make up for it. And I think if they'd look, I'm not saying they could get Rashford or Sterling, but I think Rashford or Sterling would really suit their needs right now. Like, they may not be as good as Neymar in like kind of strict talent terms, but I think they'd fit the team better. If they'd gone and tried really hard for one of those guys, or if they just said, right, we're going to get Sancho for 150 mil this summer, then at least that position is sorted in the long term, and you can turn your attention to other areas. Whereas instead, now we're having to have this conversation about what do you prioritize, like what do you go for, what do you try and solve, because they've actually solved nothing in the last few windows. They've solved nothing, and it's so frustrating.
Yeah, and they've solved nothing while their squad ages as well. Piqué 33, Suarez 33, Messi 32, Busquets 31, Rakitic, Vidal, Neto, all over 30 as well. So they're looking at potentially massive summers to come for the next 4 or 5 windows. And last summer, as massive as it was, I think it was about 250 odd million euros, was actually their second biggest of the last 3. So they're consistently spending big money. And are we seeing the results that Barcelona fans expect? Probably not at the moment. Joe, I don't know whether this is slightly throwing you under the bus, but were you surprised by Setien's appointment when he was appointed? And do you think it was the right man?
I think Barcelona fans were crying out for change. I do think that Valverde probably had to go. What I think would have been the smarter move if I was Barcelona, I would probably have chopped Valverde, despite the fact that, you know, he was still winning games. His style of football was not simpatico with Barcelona fans, and if the fans aren't getting on board, it's something has to change. I think I would potentially have gone for an interim appointment for 6 months and then look to readdress it in what would have been this summer, because I actually think there'll be some really talented managers available in this summer. And I know that Pochettino has said he won't go back to Barcelona, but he's going to be on the market. There's the chance that Thomas Tuchel could have been on the market if PSG decide to cut their losses there. I do think that Julian Nagelsmann, even if he was to win the Bundesliga with Leipzig, if Barcelona came knocking, it wouldn't completely be a shut door. And at the end of the day, I probably would have taken Erik ten Hag over Quique Setien. I think Setien has the aura of playing really nice football, but I know that you in particular, Pato, aren't convinced about whether or not that aura was because he was forced to play that way with Betis rather than wanting to play that way at Barcelona.
Yeah, I think there's this idea that like all possession football is the same.
Yeah.
And people sort of say, oh, well, he was a possession manager at Betis. Look how much with the ball they had. It's like, yeah, they had defensive possession. Like, they kept the ball so they didn't get attacked. I mean, there's a difference between Pep Guardiola, Man City having the ball 70% of the time, and Brendan Rodgers' Swansea, who also had the ball a lot of the time. But they did it because as long as they had the ball, you couldn't attack them. And because they didn't have top quality passes in midfield, they moved it back and forth a lot. They kind of passed it forward quite slowly. They would gradually sort of grind their way up the pitch. That's a lot like what Setien's side kind of was like when he was at Real Betis. And so I'm not sure. It's entirely possible that he has the ability to adjust that to Barcelona talent, but it's also possible he doesn't. And it just feels like we now have this attitude of, well, this manager isn't available and that manager isn't available. And yeah, we don't tend to see managers jump ship in the middle of the season as much as they used to. But you're Barcelona. Like, go out and try and get the manager that you want and just back yourself to try and to convince a manager that they want to come and manage Messi in the last couple of seasons of his career. Like, if you think somebody's the right guy, you should be able to make an attractive enough offer that they at least consider it. And I do think that if they made an offer to Pochettino, he'd have taken it. And do we think that Pochettino would do better than Setien? I sincerely doubt that even the Barcelona board think that Barcelona under Setien will be better than Barcelona under Pochettino.
Yeah, I think Setien, as you say, lots of those big results in big games, not least against Barcelona and Real Madrid, sort of covered up what was meandering towards the back end of last year. And actually the fans at the Benito Villamarín, from what I've read, weren't too disheartened when he left. So I think he was probably the luckiest man in the world in January when he got offered this Barcelona squad, albeit in a tricky situation. So, you know, the jury is out whether he'll be able to succeed there. And some of their other transfer interests supposedly are fairly interesting as well. Marca say that Teo Hernandez is tickling their pickle as well, but you think with bringing in Juno Firpo last year, surely
what was the point of Firpo? What was the point of Firpo?
Sure, you know, stick with him. And they're also looking supposedly at Jules Koundé as well, who plays for Sevilla, and his centre-back partner Diego Carlos as well. Don't know a lot about Jules Koundé, but Diego Carlos has had a fantastic year, and apparently Liverpool are also interested in signing him. So, I mean, if you had to get your crystal ball out, lads, just quickly before we wrap up this section, what do you see happening this summer? Will Neymar return, and if not, who will come in?
I think Neymar will stay at PSG this summer. I'd be really surprised if he's the one of the two that leave between him and Mbappe. I think Mbappe's contract runs out in 2022, doesn't it? And I think Real Madrid are going to go big for Mbappe, and I don't see PSG selling Neymar and Mbappe in the same summer. So I think Neymar will stay there, and I think Barcelona are going to have real trouble this summer because they have to shift players. And I think suitors for Philippe Coutinho are going to be extremely limited. Most clubs have either got in a very strong attacking midfielder or don't want to have to pay £80 million for a player who's in his peak or past his peak even, who's going to come with massive wages. PSG probably don't need him, given that they've got Sarabia who can't get a game, Di Maria. Man United have just brought Bruno Fernandes in, so that's not going to happen there. Man City definitely don't need him. Liverpool don't need him. Bayern don't want him. not going to go to Madrid. Juve have got a surplus of attacking midfielders, and that leaves the Milan sides. So Inter bought Eriksen. Where does he go? AC? Down to 10th in Serie A? Not going to happen. That's a massive problem. They have to shift Philippe Coutinho before they do any other business, I think.
Fair. Pat, are you in agreement? Can you see any big arrivals unless there's outgoings?
I think they'll spend money, but I'm not sure they can get Neymar either. Like I think they might get another big midfielder. They'll probably get an attacker of some kind. But yeah, unless they can offload Dembele and maybe Griezmann, I think Lautaro is probably the one. I think Lautaro is probably the one they try and get.
Makes sense, although they can't afford to get this next big money transfer wrong, as we've seen in recent windows. Guys, that's all we've got time for on our first section, but let's move on to some wicked quickfire questions now.
Wicked, I love it, wicked.
First quickfire question comes from Tom's series of numbers, who has asked who has been the outstanding goalkeeper this season. Joe, who do you fancy?
I think it's probably been Jan Oblak. Yeah, again, that display against Liverpool in the Champions League probably sealed it for me. I think last season was probably Ter Stegen or Alisson. I know that Oblak fans will be kicking up a stink about that, but Oblak's consistency has just been immense. And if that rumour of a €100 million buyout clause is true, I think a couple of teams should be interested in that, to be totally honest. Maybe Bayern Munich in particular. We spoke about it, I think, on last week's podcast, didn't we? If Manuel Neuer does leave, I know they've bought in Neubel, but if Oblak's available, he might be worth a punt. I just think Oblak's just head and shoulders above this season. Alisson and Ter Stegen last season were up there, but yeah, Jan Oblak for me.
Fair. Pat, are you in agreement with that?
I'd probably say Alisson. Like I think Oblak's great, but I do think he's had a bit of a ropey season on set pieces, it seems. Though the whole side kind of has by Atleti standards. But Alisson, Kasper Schmeichel's had a great season.
There's a name I didn't expect to hear. There is a name I didn't expect to hear. Kasper Schmeichel in this chat.
I know. And Wojciech Szczęsny as well.
I was going to mention Szczęsny, yeah.
He's been fantastic. Actually, Thomas Strakosha has had a great season too. Like when you look at Lazio, I think they've conceded something like 9 fewer goals than they should have by expected goals. And Strakosha has been a great keeper there for a long time now, and he's still only 25, I think. So he'd be an interesting one for Chelsea to go for in the summer if they want to replace Kepa. Oh, Ben Leno's been good as well, actually. In a horrible Arsenal side, he's actually been one of the better players.
Fair. I was going to mention Szczęsny, but you took the words right out of my mouth. I'd go for Crystal Palace's Gaeta as well. Yeah. I think he's been outstanding.
Dean Henderson's been better than Gaeta, and he's been better than Kasper Schmeichel.
I don't think he has, but I think he will be a better keeper than either of them. But he hasn't been better than them this season.
Yeah, Dubravka as well probably deserves a shout out. But there we have it for goalkeepers. We mentioned Oblak there. Let's get on to this question about Atletico Madrid from @6FTLS. Who says, what do you make of the rumours linking Alfredo Morelos to Atletico Madrid? That's mental. Pat, can you see that working? A Far East striker with Diego Simeone?
I mean, he's coming out of the Scottish League. Like, why would you do it? Like, I don't understand. Like, aim higher, Atleti. Like, is he an upgrade on Morata? No. Is he an upgrade on Felix? No. Is he an upgrade on Diego Costa? Even at this point in Diego Costa's career?
Probably not.
So I don't really understand why Atletico Madrid do have some money. Like they've built a huge stadium. They can sell some assets this summer. Like
they just sold Griezmann for 140 as well.
Yeah, but they've turned it around for Felix, didn't they? But it's just no. I mean, I wouldn't. It's possible he'll be a perfectly good striker, but if he goes somewhere, I reckon he'll go mid-table Prem, and he'll be fine.
I think that's a perfectly adequate answer, Joe. I won't ask for your opinion on that. Next one is from Captain Kirk 7423, our final one of the show. Joe, are Bayern right to keep Hansi Flick to take the club forward, especially when someone like Pochettino is available? You've obviously had the privilege of watching Bayern firsthand in person this year. Do you think Hansi Flick has the potential to keep his job there permanently?
I mean, I haven't watched a lot of Bayern Munich this season. did watch them against Chelsea, and they're definitely the best team I've seen play in Europe this season by a distance. So judging on that one performance, yes. I think if they were going to have gone for Pochettino, they would have gone for Pochettino. I don't see Pochettino joining Bayern Munich now. He was an option when they decided to move for Flick. He was an option, and they went with Flick. So I think Pochettino is not going to go to Bayern Munich. We can pretty much forget that one now. And I've heard the rumours of Hansi Flick and a double act with Thomas Tuchel, which sounds quite fun, doesn't it? But again, I don't see Thomas Tuchel kind of saying, I'm going to put my managerial and coaching ability alongside someone else when he's doing pretty well at PSG. He's going to win another league title. So I don't think that's going to happen. And if he proves himself over the next, if it happens, 4 months of football, then sure. Because that Bayern Munich team I watched at Stamford Bridge was by far the best team I've seen play this season. Better than Liverpool, better than Manchester City, better than Barcelona by far. They blew Chelsea away. They were on such a different planet to Chelsea, it was unreal. So yeah, I'd say keep hold of Flick.
Yeah, he deserves an enormous amount of credit, especially with dealing with their defensive injury issues that they've had this year and getting so much production out of Lewandowski, Gnabry, etc. And Thiago in the middle of the park just having another vintage year. Guys, that's all we've got time for on Continental Club for this week. Thank you very much for sticking with us in a slightly weird format. We had some tech issues to begin with, so apologies if there is any in this one that you've just seen. Thank you very much to Pato and Joe for joining. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and most importantly, leave a comment about your opinions, about our opinions down below. And thanks very much for watching, guys, and we'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.